My name is, thank you guys. My name is Ralph White. I'm an alcoholic. Grateful to be, here again this week. Um, this is a good topic for us this week. Steve is going to kick it off, but uh, uh, I've been in a place that leads to a lot. I've been really, really super busy today. And I was sitting here, T, I got to say this to you. When your picture came up, I don't know for what reason, but I could breathe. I could breathe. I feel safe and I feel like I'm at home. I'm going to kick it off to my brother, Steve.
Thank you, Ralph. And good evening, everyone. Steve, alcoholic. And yeah, one of the great things about, for me, about sharing this format with Ralph and frankly with you guys, we're however many weeks we've been together now. And, I got a lot of friends on here and it's just a comfortable place to be. And it's really just a conversation. And, but it's a real privilege for me to be doing this with Ralph. And it is comfortable for me to know that he will pick me up when I drop the ball and clean up after me. But, and being with you guys, I look and I promise you that this is not this is an observation. It is not a pride thing. We are, I'm going to say, down to 260 people from what has been about 350 or so beginning each week. And what I would tell you is, well, I don't take personal offense to that because I think it's Ralph's fault, but I don't take personal offense to that because in truth, this is about how, unfortunately, the herd begins to thin itself in Alcoholics Anonymous. If you think about your home group, if you think about when you get together well-intentioned with a group of folks that are doing that big book study or going through the steps together in your den or your sponsor's den or your buddy's den, a few people peel off. And sometimes it's because maybe they can't hear the message from the messengers, and that makes sense. And sometimes they just were more, just could not get caught up in the actual process. And but I'm grateful to have you guys here. And again, that's just sort of more observational than judgmental of anything. I got to start by reading this sentence, right? We're moving here to talk about fears. We're getting into causes and conditions about all of these relationships in my life and fears and what drove me, what was behind the actions that I took that often I was even unaware of. And when Bill says, talking about fear, that it's an evil and corroding thread, the fabric of our lives is shot through with it. Man, that's some Stephen King, Dean Koontz first paragraph in a book kind of stuff. That's some dramatic writing by Bill. And the fabric of my existence is shot through with it. And man, when I get a little distance from it and think about that, that is absolutely true of me, certainly true of me as I've lived my life coming into Alcoholics Anonymous, and can be true of me in a given moment today because I am not over being impacted by fear. I want to show you something real quickly because we say that this is, among other things, we titled this an experiential step workshop. For those of you who've been here, my sobriety date is June 30th of 1989. I will show you you can't read it. In fact, you can't even see it in this virtual background, but I've got a fear inventory here dated March the 2nd of 1997. It's the first fear inventory I ever did. I was almost 8 years sober and did not know I had not done one. And I don't blame that on anybody, but I will tell you I had not done a fear inventory. I went to a weekend that was where some men were doing their version, much better than me, but doing their version of what Ralph and I are doing here. And they began to talk about the inventory as we have talked. And I realized I had not done what they had done. And I did this first inventory. And it changed the trajectory of my recovery. Because I will tell you that I knew that I was afraid, but I was not using that language, and I did not know how to take a look at it. And I will share with you the fear. This is 1997, and the reason I'm telling you this, I'm also going to read a bit of a fear inventory in a minute from February of 2019. So a lot of years later, and the truth is, the key factors are almost the same. On March the 2nd of 1997, I had a fear of being wrong. I had a fear of failure. I had a concern of how others perceived me. I had a fear of discovery and rejection that you would figure out. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was pretending to know what I was doing. I had a fear of I was being promoted within this family business and moving back to Tennessee from Virginia to take over this role. And I had a fear that I wasn't up to it. I had a fear that the people that I was going to be supervising and over were going to know I wasn't up to it. And I had a fear of financial insecurity of going broke, which we were well on our way to. I went bankrupt in 1999, so I began to see the signs in 97. And I've got 5 other inventories here. There are many more that I have, but I got an inventory from 97, from 99, from 2001, from 2007, and 2019 that I just pulled out of a folder that I keep because I keep these inventories. And I go over, I let the men I sponsor see some of these because I want you to know, and I want them to know that this is not a theory, that this is something that I do. And it is not as complicated as a guy like me tries to make it. You know, what I discovered, and when we'll get down into the directions of the fear inventory in a few minutes, at least the directions that the book gives us, some things to do to take a look at. But I will tell you that what I discover in the inventory is that usually I'm not afraid of what I think I'm afraid of when I start the inventory. Usually, I tell you, I will share this lest I forget to do it later, and then I've got a question for Ralph, and I'm going to let him share for a few minutes. We're going to try to bat it back and forth a little more tonight, but I will tell you, if you hear either of these phrases, know that both of these are amongst the most often told lies in Alcoholics Anonymous. The first is I'll be brief, and the other is I'll end with this. And if you hear either of those, strap in. We got a little while to go. But when I put down on this inventory that I was afraid, I had financial insecurity. I was afraid of going broke. And the fears I had attached to that was I was afraid that my wife and daughter were going to suffer for my irresponsibility, my sober irresponsibility. I was afraid that my daughter was going to be embarrassed because we would have to pull her out of the school that she was in and put her in my God, she might have to go to public school. My fear was that we were going to have to sell the home we were in and move from the neighborhood we were in to a home in a neighborhood that I was deeming less desirable. And those fears were there. And they were real. But just below that tier, below that surface level of fears was the fear that I didn't want my wife and daughter to be hurt. But more importantly, I didn't want to be the guy that let them get hurt. That was my fear. And then I looked one more layer below that, and the biggest truth revealed itself is I didn't want you to look at me like the guy that made them have to do that. So as I dig, I continue to discover that I have my 2 biggest fears in all these 31 years of my sobriety is, one, my fear of what I think you think about me. And number 2 is I discovered I don't want anything to be my fault. I can't take the heat. I don't mind being in a hard place. I don't mind trouble if you caused it. You don't want, I'm a great guy to have in the foxhole with you. I just don't want to take responsibility. I don't want it to be my fault. And I'll talk about that some more tonight. Ralph, did you walk into this inventory realizing the impact that fear was having on your life?
Absolutely not. Um, and so Steve started out the reading when it talked about fear, with our existence was shot through, said it was an evil and corroding thread. And then it said it set in motion trains of circumstances that brought me misfortune I thought I didn't deserve. Long sentences. What's it look like? Absolutely not, Steve. My sobriety date is October the 11th of 1986. And I was 33 when I got here. And I was a scared little boy playing and being a man. And the fear that has dominated me most of my life is the one Steve said, the fear of what I think you think about me, because it's the fear of being found out. The book talks about isn't it? And the book, when you read the fear inventory, it says, we ask ourselves why we had the fear. And then it says this, isn't it because self-reliance failed us? If you had given me 100 multiple choice answers, I wouldn't have picked. It was because self-reliance failed me. So when he just sticks that sentence in there like it's just, isn't it because, hey, hold up. The hell are you talking about? Isn't it because self-reliance failed us? When Steve was just walking through those fears, which he seems like he's my twin brother, I'm a guy that is really, really cool with crisis management, uh, especially when it's somebody else that created the crisis. I'm the guy. Oh, it's cool. I got you. I got your back. But I'm not the guy. And that piece that Steve just brought out, a piece about uh, please don't let it be my fault. And more importantly, please don't let people see it's my fault. That fear, which is the underlying and the basis of all my fears, what I think you think about me, I think it goes to something even deeper than that. So then the book says we're prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. When we talk about the fear inventory, I too have done many fear inventories. When we talked last week and we kind of gave an overview, we talked about resentment inventory. And inventory in general, I'm going to assume again, we've got some people on here who are fairly new. And I'm going to assume again that we've got some people on here who, though they may not be new to recovery, may be new to the practice of the steps. And so the question comes, well, how many of these damn inventories do you guys do? Why is dude talking about he did inventory, when he was 7 years old, and then he did one again, what is this? I don't have a stance on, I hear some people say they wrote one inventory. After that, they did 10 steps. The 12 and 12 talks about various inventories, the spot check inventory, the annual. I'm a guy who has done a number of inventories in my 34 years here. And I shared last week, part of the reason is I'm a part of a group. And when we get to inventory, because I'm a member, I do inventory. I have not revisited fear inventory as often as I've done resentment inventory and sex conduct. I haven't, in fact, I've done resentment inventory more than the other two inventories combined. Sex conduct inventory, thank God, it tended to get to a point where, at least in my case, you shouldn't have to be, I pretty soon had pretty much inventoried um, uh, that pretty completely. Fears, mine haven't always shifted and changed. What has happened is I'm the same guy. I'm a different guy with some of the same fears. So they show up differently and they present differently and they have different impacts on my life. I'm not one that does a lot of, but my sponsor talks about his first fear inventory, snakes, dogs, and tall buildings. I don't I don't discount that. When you write your list of fears, write your list of fears. I'm more interested in the fears that tend to dominate me. I'm interested in the fears that tend to undermine where I want to be and how I want to be in life. I'm scared of heights. I don't do a lot of writing about it. I fly all the time. It doesn't keep me off airplanes. I'm scared of snakes. I'm never around them. I don't handle snakes. I really don't get into writing a bunch about that. But I'm scared of being a man. I'm a scared little boy playing of being those are the kind of things that I looked at that ate my lunch. I was a scared little boy playing of being a man. The book talks about just to the extent we play the role that God assigns. And here's the prize in fear inventory, you guys. And it doesn't sound like a prize the way that it's wrapped. He enables us to match calamity with serenity. What? That's it? That's it? Yeah, you're going to face some stuff and you're going to man up. You will be given some things that allow you to man up. And here's the antidote to fear, you guys. People say, well, arm me with some courage. Well, how do I get courage? And then there's a part in that book, in that step that says, all men of faith have courage. So don't go after courage, Ralph. Go after faith. Don't go after courage. Go after faith. I can't wish it. I can't will it. Here's my deal with fear. I can appear to have courage because I'm so scared of what you'll think of me in a fearful situation that I'll do stupid things. I've taken ass whoopings because I was afraid of looking bad in front of people and backing down. That's what fear does in my life. Setting in motion trains of circumstances we thought we didn't deserve. 33, scared of being a father, scared of being at the time. I had when I got to you guys, I didn't think I'd be welcome in anybody's life again because I had failed as a husband. Scared of that, scared of commitment, scared of responsibility, scared of failure. Didn't think I was scared of success. The thing about doing inventory is not that I'll write down and find out a lot of stuff I already knew about me. The thing about inventory is I'll discover some things I didn't know about me. That's why we write. That's why we write. That's why we don't just do stream of consciousness. That's why we don't just sit up and share it. I mean, to think, oh, I've done. That's why we write. That's why I write. Discovered some things about me that I didn't know was there. I didn't know really the extent of how much fear actually ran my life. Everybody in here right now, and I've been fortunate, you guys, in the pandemic. I've been kind of cool. Some things have happened. I put on way too much weight. That's not been a good thing. I haven't had to spend a lot of money. So even though I got furloughed from a job I was working, I learned some stuff about me. I'm 67. I share it a lot of times, you guys. What I learned is I used to think to myself, I'll never want to get up and go and I can never imagine not getting up and going to work. Even if I hit the lottery, I go to work. I don't know how people retire. I got to go to work. Well, I've discovered that's not true. And I've discovered I don't want to visit another person's office ever again. Ever again. Something's been revealed to me in this pandemic. But what has happened also, you guys, is this other thing has happened. I've been able to deepen and broaden and have some different relationships than I've had. And so I've done a lot of working with people and a lot of more intense work with my sponsees. And so I've done a lot of swimming in fear. I've done a lot of swimming in fear. As a sponsor, I don't call myself, and I probably use the wrong words, and I don't mean to offend anybody or throw darts at what anybody else does, because I respect it. I'm not the clinical guy. I'm not the guy that, look, just the facts. My personality. Now, my personality as a guy can be somewhat aloof and somewhat off-putting to people. I can have that, but don't let me in your life because I'm in there. And so I've been swimming in a lot of fear. Um, uh, in this business of why we do fear inventory, you guys, it is really, um, it's vital. I used to, resentment inventory. We talk about resentments, how the fear, the power to actually kill. But a lot of times when I'm doing resentment inventory and I'm dealing with anger, anger is actually a lot of times a false emotion. For me, you know, anger is a mask for fear. You know, uh, no, you can't tell me nothing. It's not that you can't tell me nothing, or no, I'm defiant. I ain't gonna do that. It ain't that I'm not gonna do it. It's I'm scared I can't. It's I'm scared I can't. And I can't say I'm scared that I can't. So what I do is I get pissed off. What I do is I act angry because anger feels more manageable to me. Anger feels more controllable to me. Fear runs me. I don't run it. Now I don't run anger, but it feels like I do. It feels like I can control when I'm striking out at you. It feels like I can control when I'm lashing out at you. It feels like I can control when I'm checking you. It feels like I can control when I'm getting you off me. It feels like I can control when I'm putting you in place. Each and every one of those situations can trace it back to fear. Can trace it back to fear. So when we be thinking about this evil and corrosive thread, we think it ought to be classed with stealing. Every single major situation that you guys have heard me talk about over the years, because I'm transparent. I share about a lot of times that third valley I was in at 22 years sober, when I had lost, a long marriage, and when I lost my house, all that, you know, um, uh, fear set in motion trains of circumstances that brought me misfortune I thought I didn't deserve. I'm the guy that sets it in motion. And I guess I'm kind of talking around it because but I've been swimming in it these last 3 days, deep, you guys. And I've been swimming in it with some other people's stuff. So I'm hesitant to really get deep in that, but I've been swimming in it and it is so clear to me, you know, when fear gets me in this, I forget God. I forget God. Fear is too big. Uh-uh. He's there leaving me. They're breaking up with me. My relationship is on the line. Spons, what the hell? This job is gone. I don't have, where's the money coming from next week? And fear. Whoa, 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 whoa. Where did I lose my second step? Where did I lose my third step? And it sat up in here, I've been there, and I've had discussions, and I've been on the other side of discussions. Uh, and the reason we do fear inventory, you guys, uh, is for people like us. It's hard being grown every day. It's hard being grown every day because life is big. Life is bigger than me. So when it says, we ask ourselves why we had the fear. Isn't it because self-reliance failed me? Me relying on me can't make Rodney like me. Me relying on me can't make Rodney respect me. Fellas, respect is a big deal. Me relying on me, I can't make this give me this job that I so desperately want. Me relying on me, I'm in a business, man, where I'm dependent on some commissions and this stuff ain't coming off right. And I get discouraged. When I told you, T, when I saw your face, I could breathe because I've been in some, uh, and the cold thing about fear, you guys, fear crops up in the middle of a blessed situation. I'm fearful of losing stuff that I got. Wait a minute. I'm living a charmed and blessed life. I call it the tyranny of the blessings. I get so busy getting scared of maintaining the blessings I forget all about maintaining the relationship with the one who gave them to me. Scared about it. I'm not going to get this deal. I'm not going to close this thing. I'm not going to make this money. And the one thing that I got that you can't take away from me, I had this conversation with somebody yesterday, and we get to the God is everything or God is nothing feature of antidote to fear. That is the antidote to fear. We get to that. And it's easy to say as a word and it's easy to say as a phrase. And if you're new on this thing and you've been running around saying it all the time, there are some people who've been doing life for a minute that'll say, I don't know that I need God to be everything till I know I need God to be everything. And that's not a sentence. You'll know it when you get to it. When you're in the situation where, okay, God, it's you or it's nothing, you'll know it when you see it. I'm in it with a couple of people right now. And I mean, we were in it so tough yesterday. But Steve, I'm gonna bat this back to you. But this piece, I get grateful. I'm gonna go in the book, you guys, for a moment. If you want to know where fear inventory is, everybody these days seems to know where sex conduct inventory is. It's on 69. Well, fear inventory, that's a way for you guys to remember fear. It's on the page right before sex inventory. Sex inventory starts at the bottom of where fear inventory leads off. We reviewed them, we put them on paper, and it says there was a better way. We are on a basis of trusting and relying on God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. We're in the world to play the role he assigns. So when it says, what do we do with fear? It says we ask God to show us what he would have us be. And then we commence our, okay, God, what would you have me be in this situation? Because I've been in situations and making money. And what I would have me to be is the guy that makes it happen for you. What I would have me to be is the guy who closes a deal. What I would have me to be is the guy who does whatever it takes to make sure that this money is on the table. That's what I would have me to be. And I set in motion trains of circumstances when I was doing this business years ago. When I lost my house, it was because of fear that I have to be the man to make this happen. My family deserves it, right? Forget when you're buying stuff, you guys, it ain't about what you can deserve. It's about what you can afford. But my family deserves it. And I said, we're going to go down this path. I say it, we're going to do it. Can I afford it? Hell no. Could I afford it in the moment? Maybe so. But I go down this path and it sets in motion trains of circumstances. I ain't going to even tell you some of the things that I can do to make something happen. I'm not going to tell you some of the things I can do to make something happen in any arena. What is it that makes me have to make something happen? Afraid of what you gonna think about me. Afraid of, I got to have an answer. The most freeing thing for a guy like me, Sandy used to say it, look for ways to say that you're wrong. Look for places where you're wrong. This fear of not being enough in and out of myself has been the driving force in my life, most of my life, without me knowing it, Steve. And so coming out the back end of fear. So you talk about, so I'm new and I'm listening to you. And I'm listening to a guy tell me he wrote an inventory, a fear inventory, and he did it a number of years ago. And then he pulls out another inventory and he looked at it and it was 12 years later. And it's the same stuff sitting on there. Damn, dude, why am I going to do this if I'm going to look the same 12 years later?
Is that a rhetorical question?
No, that's a question.
I'll tell you, Ralph, and it's interesting because what I see is the same fears show up, but in that 12 years, and then frankly, and I've done many more, but to use your example, all 12 of those years, I wasn't paralyzed both by those fears, but those fears will appear. Those fears will come and go based on my connection to that power greater than myself, based on my living a self-reliant versus a God-reliant life. And the inventory, whether it be, as you said, a 10th or 11th step review, kind of taking a look at me, or a deep dive, as is called for occasionally, is where that stuff begins to show itself. You know, when it says, I'm going to share my experience and what it sounds like and looks like to me today. Because when it says we reviewed our fears thoroughly and we put them on paper. And then, as Ralph says in the book said, we ask ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? I do view that as a rhetorical question. I view the question as the answer. That is not, that's not like, Steve, this is one of the options available to you. The book is letting me know that my fear is because self-reliance has failed me. And it took me, so what is self-reliance? It says we're living on, as Ralph said, we're living on a different basis. Well, what's that different basis? Well, it says that we're trusting infinite God rather than our finite selves. But the different basis, that's just a restatement of just 5 pages before in this book. I got on my knees and said, God, do with me as you will. Do with me as you will. And then my fear list is the things that I'm taking back. Do with me as you will, except this list of things. And I don't always know, that's not a conscious decision. But when that fear said, do with me as you will, except make my wife stay. Do with me as you will, but my daughter, I want her to stay out of trouble or do better or be happy. Do with me as you will, except mess with my money. So my fear list is the group of contractual exceptions I have created around this covenant with God. And I don't even know I've done it until I take this look. And here's what here's what this self-reliance looks like to me. When I am in fear based on self-reliance, I'm afraid something's going to be TOO something. It's going to be too hard. I'm going to be too old. I'm going to be too embarrassed. I'm going to be too lonely. It's going to last too long. It's not going to last long enough. It's going to be more than I can handle. And the answer is yes, it is. It's not that, no, Steve, it is more than I can handle. And that's why I'm inviting God into this process. When I'm living on self singularly, I am overmatched by the world and its people and my circumstances. I should be afraid. I should be afraid. I'm driving a boat. I don't know how to drive. I'm in charge of the rocket ship. I don't know how to fly. My life is being run. I am managing my life again, and I am nervous about the outcome. So when it says in here that I am in the world to play the role he assigns, that's another way, right? That's another way I realize that I'm breaking this covenant. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that because I'm human, I'm always going to vacillate back and forth on my level of God reliance and self-reliance. I'm always going to be on the meter somewhere. Never am I going to be all in and forever. Now, maybe there's somebody here that's beat the game, but not me. I'm in an ebb and flow situation, which is why I'm encouraged to take this regular look at myself. So, I was on, I told you I was moving toward this bankruptcy in 97. In fact, I did a financial inventory. I did this financial inventory, and I did it so well that it demonstrated that if I didn't do something differently, I was probably going to go broke. So I didn't show my sponsor the inventory because he would have probably suggested I do something differently. I folded it up and put it in the back of my big book in 1997. From 1997 to 1999, I was afraid of going bankrupt. I started waking up at 4 a.m. with a knot in my stomach. My head was spinning. I began to worry about it. I began to rob Peter to pay Paul. I began to take calls from the credit folks, the debt collectors. I began to worry about how I was going to look to other people. I was living in that fear, and I got on an airplane to take a flight one day. And as we were taxiing down the runway, I realized I was literally almost doubled over in my seat. I was so tight. My body was so tight. And I realized that the reason I had all of this fear was because I had decided this can't be happening to me. And it was happening to me. And if I've decided something can't happen, but it is happening, that is going to frighten me. And the solution to that problem is not to keep it from happening. The solution of that problem is to be okay whether it happens or not. To give up this self-directed role and accept the role that God is assigning me. And I will tell you, I physically changed in the seat of that airplane that day. I filled that seat up one more time. I sat up straight and tall, and I could take a deep breath. And again, that didn't last forever, but that's as close to a vital spiritual experience as I've had in my recovery. I will tell you that this, when we looked over and did our inventory on resentments and in the affects my column, we see fear out there and fear seems to be attached to my self-esteem and to my security. See, like you said, it's not a fear of snakes. It's a fear of me letting you know I'm afraid of snakes. My fear, it's not what I'm afraid of. It's my pride and ego's need to protect me, to seemingly protect me. And that very protection is what leaves me in fear, because that is self-reliance. That is the epitome of self-reliance, for me to be trying to manage my own image. I took a job change at 58 years old. I'd worked with one company, family business. I'd had this job for 38 years. I wasn't particularly good at it, but man, it was stable, right? They couldn't fire me, and I'd been there, never worked for anybody else, but I'd become unhappy in the job. I made a decision, and I needed a paycheck. It wasn't like I was making decisions where the finances weren't an important part of the considerations. But I did make a decision that as I went out and talked to people about this next position I was going to take, that I was just going to show up as me. I was going to take a gamble on me, on adopting and accepting the role he assigned. Because here's what happens. We go show up and interview one way, and then sooner and get the job. Jesus, we can get hired. We can get hired, but a little while later, I show up. I always show up in a little. So why don't I give them a glance at me on the front end? So the person they hire is the person that's there a month later and a year later, and see how that works. And the truth is, it has made my work life remarkably more enjoyable. I don't know that I'm better at it, but I'm spending so much less time acting. I will tell you that there's a difference. People talk about fear and faith not being able to reside in the same space, and I don't have a clue. I don't even argue about that. Here's what I know is true. I don't know if fear and faith can reside in the same space, but they can change places instantaneously and several times a day. I can leave my house prayed up and connected, and at 8 in the morning and around 10:30, those worldly clamors, mostly those within myself, will have shown up. And all of a sudden, I'm wrapped around the axle again. I get that phone call where somebody, I realize I hadn't done what I said I would do work-wise, and I got to decide on that call whether to tell a lie or not, whether to try to protect myself. And I'm about a 70-30 student in that I still failed the test, okay? But then I get to go, own it back. I will also say that Bill Wilson, this has been really helpful to me. In one of Bill's writings, he uses the phrase, he talks about prudence. And in this particular case, he's using the word prudence instead of fear. And the differentiator for me, and certainly we're talking about self-centered fear. Not that fear of an oncoming train, I'm talking about self-centered fear. But Bill uses the word prudence, and he describes prudence as reasonable concern without worry. I like reasonable concern. It is reasonable for me to buy life insurance and health insurance. It is reasonable when I get ready to cross the street. I don't go, well, let go and let God, let's go. And if it be God's will, I'll get to the other side. No, I take a little traffic check. I see if there's any oncoming cars. But if I'm there 3 days later and hadn't made it across the street, that has become an unreasonable fear that is now dictating my life, that has taken hold of me. I'm not through having fear, but I am much less likely to have fear make my decisions for me today. That faith is, when it says all men of faith have courage, that implies that I'm going to need some courage to overcome the hesitance I've got. Oh, God, you say this is what I'm supposed to do? We're moving toward these amends, and that doesn't look like a good idea, right? Someone go, so I am afraid to make this amend, but I say, God, this is the plan? Really? And so when I go make that amends, it doesn't mean I don't always do that fearlessly, but I can do it in spite of the fear. I can now my faith can override the self-reliance that's at the core of these things that tends to stop me and used to totally direct my life. Here's one of the big benefits for me today. I'm not nearly as afraid, nearly as often, for nearly as long, at near the intensity as I used to be. But the accompanying freedom from fear is that when I am afraid, I don't have to pretend I'm not. When I am afraid, I've got people I talk to. I got my road dogs that Ralph will talk about. I got guys I call and I say, man, I'm scared shitless today. This has got me, but I'm going to take the actions a guy would take if he weren't afraid. Now that's different than acting. I'm going to act as if, but I'm not pretending. I'm not being fake. I'm letting you know I'm scared. I'm anxious. I'm uncomfortable. I'm nervous, whatever language I want to attach to it. And I tell you that, but I'm going to do it anyway. And before I couldn't let you know that I was afraid. I couldn't share that sense of discomfort. And that has, again, become one of the connection points, because the truth is none of us is going to be 100% free of fear. What we do is find out how to navigate it. I'm going to tell a quick story. And in fact, I'll be brief and end with this. I'll tell this story that Ralph has heard me and a few people here have heard me share, and it's not my story. It is Howard Poland's story. And many folks on here are familiar with Howard, who passed away a while back. But Howard even wrote a book called My Life on a Frozen Lake. And that grew out of a story that Howard would tell about how me or you might live life as if we are walking across a frozen lake and afraid with each step that the ice is going to break and crack and we're going to fall through and drown. And for several years before Howard passed away, I told him I had improved upon his story. Now, Howard did not believe I'd improved on his story, but Howard's gone, so he's not here to defend himself tonight. And in my story, there are two people walking across the frozen lake. One person who's absolutely certain that with each step, that ice just might crack, he just might fall through and drowned in these icy waters. And the other person absolutely certain that the ice is going to hold and that he will be fine. And they start their walk across the lake, and sure enough, about halfway across, the ice cracks and they both drown. But the guy who thought the ice was going to hold him had a much nicer walk up until then. What I will tell you is that I want to enjoy the walk. I know that things are going to happen. I don't want to live my life as if each step is anxiety ridden, is angst driven, is totally that I am blanketed in the fear of what if. Because it's going to happen. If I have truly turned my will and my life over the care of God, it's going to be what it's going to be. So why don't I just enjoy the walk and then see what happens? And that's my best effort today. Ralph, I'll throw it back to you, buddy.
I love that story every time you tell it. It is it's especially telling for anybody who is interested in our way of life. If you want to get in the game, don't be scared. If you want to get in the game, and I always talk about that, you can sit on the sidelines or you can decide I'm going to either let fear run me or I'm not. I sometimes think to myself, what if I'm lying about this God thing? I drive along sometime and say, Ralph, what if you're lying to yourself? What if there really ain't a power? What if you drank the A Kool-Aid? You've been up here, you're one of the people who does a lot of stuff. But what if in your heart, what if there really ain't one? And what comes to me is what Steve just said. It's more comforting for me to believe there is than there ain't. It's more comforting for me to believe there is that there ain't, because a life run on my own will and my life run on my own power, I run out of steam. I've proven it to myself that I run out of steam. So we've done a lot of talking, and Steve has done a lot of stories about this business of fear. And the antidote to the fear, it says, all men of faith, the verdict of the ages is that all men of faith have courage. So it seems to me that the antidote then is this whole, this faith deal. As I think about what we're reading today, I really see the symmetry of the steps. Way back when we started talking about, I suffer from an illness that only a spiritual experience can conquer. Then we reiterate that right here. And we say there's a better way. We're on a different basis. The basis of trusting and relying upon God. Only a spiritual experience can conquer. That's another way of saying, okay, we're on that basis. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. Then I'm going to give you guys a preview. We're going to go back to this part over and over and over. I don't want to say it now because I'm probably going to reiterate it when we get to 6 and 7. But it's very interesting to me. We talked about in the third step, getting on my knees and saying, okay, God, I need you to do something with me because I ain't been doing too good a job of it. Now we looked at our resentments and we looked particularly at our fears. And we looked at how me, who's always been a scared little boy, who's always been one who's, I say it often, you guys, if you treat me special, I feel normal. If you treat me normal, I feel rejected. I don't know what this is about my DNA. I don't know what it is about the way that I'm built that requires me to just need something else to just be okay. But here's the good news about when you do fear inventory and when you take a look at that, and when you make a decision that you want something different in your life, when you make a decision that you want to stand up and be grown in your life, something happens in spite of who you are. Because even though I still feel like to a large extent, I still feel as if I have a lot of the same fears that I've had since I was as old as I can remember. As a result of practicing these principles and as a result of doing this stuff, I know it's in me, but when I take a step back from it, I've been remarkably changed in that area. I'm a guy that does a lot of talking about what do I think you think about me, but for real, in my life, I do a lot of stuff like Think about me, whatever you want to think about me. And I can't tell you the day or the time or the hour or what action, um, but it's a lot of people still trapped in uh, hanging out with people because I need you to like me. Going to places, hanging with people, uh, taking actions, cutting corners, because I'm scared of what you'll think about me if I don't. Uh, you guys, you know what? Uh, I do the whole God thing for real, and it's unconscious now, but as a result of practicing these principles, I talk in my own voice and I walk my own walk, and I imagine uh, that I'm not everybody's flavor, and that's man, be you. Do this fear inventory and do this deal that we're going to repeat when we get to the 6th and the 7th step. I'm convinced that the reason it's only one paragraph in 6 and 7 is because all the way up there we're doing 6 and 7. Doesn't this sound a little bit like 6 and 7 when we say uh, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us to be. When I ask him to remove my fear, guess what's getting removed when I ask him to remove my fear? What is getting removed when I ask him to remove my fear is the perpetrating that I do, the lying and the dishonesty that I do, the being the taking on this other persona that I do, this hanging out with people that ain't good for me that I do, this cutting corners that I do, this all that when I say take away my fear, that's one sentence, but do you know what's involved in taking away Ralph's fears? Do you know what's involved in that? So this business is we'll revisit this when we get to 6 and 7. But the same way that I can't take away these defects previewing, I can't take away my fear myself. But what I can do is practice and get it. Uh, all men of faith have courage. That's the antidote. Don't work on trying to have courage. Work on getting faith. Why? What gives me faith? Okay. What gives me faith is continued, consistent, persistent, walk with the power. What gives me faith in some of you guys, what gives me faith in some of my friendships, what gives me faith that some of you have my back is persistent, consistent, over the years. When I see, I hate to go back to that. When a T popped on my screen, okay, I got comfortable. You know, when I get faced with a situation that's bigger than me, in my meditation some weeks ago, it talked about Ralph, when you confronted with a situation that scares you, bring to that situation, instead of looking at the fear, look at the consciousness of the presence of the power. Look at the consciousness of the presence of the power. Look at where you got a long history of answered prayer, and you got a long track record for yourself. And um, ask God what he would have you to be. So when I get in a situation, like when I walk up on somebody and I have it, it's petty for me. I've had situations where this fear of what I think you need me to be. Hey, Ralph, aren't you the lawyer? Yeah, I'm a lawyer. I've never been a lawyer. That's Ronnie. Just out of the blue. If you ask me who I am today, I'm just me. Ralph, are you like, no, ain't never been one. No, ain't never been one. If you ask me, do I know something that I don't know it? And that's huge for me because I gotta know, especially if you ask me. No, I don't know. I don't have an opinion. I don't have a thought. I don't have a judgment. Um, we are wow, I'm going over this time. Steve, I so want to thank you for being so clear with us tonight on fear. fear inventory, the power of fear, the hold that it has on a guy like me and guys like me and you. And more than that, you guys, the benefits to doing the looking, and the benefits to turning it over, and the benefits of having the power, and the benefits of God is everything or he is nothing, and the benefits of a continued, persistent, and consistent walk. And he'll transform you. You'll be transformed without you knowing it. And that's why we don't grade our own papers. And that's why I so like to keep coming with you guys, because you guys remind me. Because in me, I'm still a scared little boy dominated by what I think people think. But when I get with you, you remind me. You remind me. No, Ralph, God has done something with you. And I'm gonna say this finally. Don't lose what it is that's the greatest antidote we had to fear. So with one of my sponsees yesterday, really, really, really feeling like a failure. Really, really, really feeling like life has gotten too big. Really feeling like I bounced from job to job, and that's unfamiliar to me. And I pointed out to him, I was without a job for 3 years. Scary place. I've never been a guy that couldn't find a job. I went on 2 temp assignments and they let me go inside of a week. Embarrassed to tell people that. Temp assignments. I've never had a problem finding work. I've never been told you're not welcome here. And I started losing, you guys. And I started facing that fear. I lost self-confidence in myself. But I'll tell you the antidote. And I'm going to get out of here because I'm in our Q&A time. But I'll tell you the antidote to that fear, because I lived in it. I was swimming in it. 2 antidotes. 1, I kept coming to you guys. And 2, here's the deal that we have. Don't lose it. I was always useful and always had a life of purpose. And fear will make me forget who it is that I am. I'm an alcoholic. Work is what I do. This is who I am. And the power of remembering my assignment, that I'm of use and I have value and I have purpose. If you're sitting on the platform right now and money is tight, relationship is on the line, don't know if they're going to let you come back to work from the furlough, having problems finding something in this scary time of ours, it feels like. And you've been doing this maybe for a minute, and I forgot who I am. I forgot who I really am. I forgot that I have use, I have value, I have purpose. I forgot that I'm a person of faith, which gives me courage. I forgot that I got a God that's everything, even when I can't see it. I forget. Fear makes me forget the essentials. It makes me forget to keep the main thing, and I get there. So if you're in that dark place, what you do when you're in the dark, you come in here where we have a light, and we will help you get back to what the antidote is. All men of faith have courage. We'll help you get back to that. That's the unspoken part of doing that piece. Don't try to do it by yourself. You guys have continued to help me and reconnect me. I'm going over way too far. Ali, we're giving it to you. Let's do some Q&A.
If I could, in closing for us, and Ralph said that what we do is we ask God to remove our fears and turn us to what he would have us be. Then the book says, and I'm really saying this for somebody new that might think that Ralph and I have somehow ascended beyond fear, and we think we've made clear we haven't. But the next line is that at once we commence to outgrow fear. And I will tell you, I'm still in the outgrowing phase. I'm still in the end, and I think we commence to outgrow fear. But it is, and sometimes like when you're a kid and you can't, your parents mark that place in the doorway for your height, and then you don't see yourself pop up above that. You come in some while later and go, oh, look, I've grown a little bit. And that's the way this has been for me in AA. And the other thing I want to make clear is that sometimes it sounds like that I or someone else is saying, if you have enough faith, everything will turn out okay. If you're faithful enough and prayerful enough, everything will turn out okay. What my experience has been, and the different angle to look at that, is that I'll be okay no matter how things turn out. And that's a significant difference, and that has really opened up a lot for me. So thanks, and Teresa, take it away.
Dave B, come on up, please.
Yeah, thanks a lot. My name's Dave. On that fair, a guy showed me on the calamity matches serenity, and man, I had some calamity coming on today, and it did match that serenity. I didn't realize it until I got here again, but that reading that I did with he would think I would have, and after I prayed, 3rd step, 7th step, and yeah, I was having a colonoscopy, and they do anesthesia. Well, I didn't have the right procedures, so I didn't do the anesthesia, and it worked out all right. And I just that calamity, I understand that with that calamity, there's a lot of fear and just a lot of anxiety, and I was tripping.
Thank you, Dave. Can I ask you to formulate a question, please, if you have one? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, just wondering what the calamity matches serenity, what they think calamity was. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I may have said last week or one of the previous weeks that I figured out what a calamity is. It's anything that can't be happening to me. And and the way I match that is if I am truly willing to, you said, to the extent that I humbly rely on him and live as I believe he would have me, which is different than even doing it well. It just means I'm doing my best.
Karen, would you come on up, please?
Hi, I'm Karen, and I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Ali, for your service, and Teresa, and all the co-hosts. And of course, Ralph and Steve, thank you so much for your service and your message. I'm so grateful to be here. I just want to ask you, when it comes to doing the inventory, whether it's resentments, fear, or sex conduct, what are your thoughts on using the sheets that you can find online versus, let's say just writing it out, before, like the sheets that they have? So I just want to know what your thoughts are on, doing the inventory with the sheets.
I don't have any thoughts on it. The people I work with, that we don't use those, but there are as many different ways to do inventory as there are alcoholics. So I just encourage you to do it. I haven't had experience with the sheets. I know what you're talking about. So, but I no longer have strong opinions about what people do.
Here's what I know. I'm sitting in this room at 31 years sober, and I do not use the sheets. I'm not anti-sheet. I've just never fallen into that. My wife is in the other room, 31 years sober. She has only used the sheets, and I think we're doing pretty good. So I think different strokes for different folks.
Thank you, Karen, for your question. Joel Phoenix, would you come on up, please? You're still muted, brother.
Yes. My name is Joel. I'm a real alcoholic, and I recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. You guys are so wonderful. I love you too. It's a good match. I want to thank you. I don't know which one of you said this, but there's a direct connection with the fear inventory and the 3rd step. I mean, something you guys said that I said, yeah, it is about making that decision to turn our will and our lives over to care of God. I have a comment and then a question. The comment is, I used to go to many big book studies, and I went to 2 in 1 week where it ended with We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attentions to what he would have us be. And then I went to another meeting later that week, and I found out what he would say, what does God have us be? It was like playing in my mind. And on page 133, it says, we are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. I kind of like that connection. It was like a hyperlink should be there. My question with you, and I think it relates to fear, which also relates to the third step, and I'm not a great wordsmith, but I think the three words that have to do with fear and the third step are belief, faith, and trust. And I'm not much of a wordsmith. I heard Joe and Charlie talk about belief being a priori knowledge, something you believe somebody else has had it, and then faith, you have an experience. And then I had a friend of mine that says, but do you trust this process? So I'd like you guys to expound on those three words if you can.
I got a friend, Scott, that says that faith is hope with a track record. And that might be what I find I can do, Joe, and I now try to avoid it because I spent years doing it, and that is overthink and overparse the words and get lost in the academia versus the experience.
Thank you, Joel. Trisha, would you come on up, please? Trisha, can you unmute yourself, please? Going once, twice. Okay, we'll come back to you. Sanjeev, come on up, please.
Thank you so much. I love to hear you guys go through this stuff. But both of you said tonight, quoted the book, The Verdict of the Ages, men of faith have always been men of courage. And so don't you think, I think you can't have courage without fear. I mean, if you run into a building to save a burning building to save a child, that's courageous unless you're just stupid. It's courageous because you know you're not fireproof. So I don't think fear is a bad thing. Can fear be a bad thing? That's the question. Fear itself.
Can fear be a bad thing? Well, I'm going to agree with the book. I don't need the book to tell me it can be, but the book says we think it ought to be classed with stealing. Set into motion trains and circumstances that brought me misfortune. So I think, knowing you, Doug, I think that that's not really the question you wanted to say. I think you might have wanted to say, is there a place for fear is an instinct. And when you see a snarling dog running at you, that adrenaline rush, which is automatic, our fire breaks out. So fear, yeah, that kind of fear, but the kind of fear that we talk about, which is the fear which is debilitating, but what you started with, and I'm going to take liberty now in answering, when you talked about men of faith have courage, I think for me, because I asked myself, what does that mean? Why does it mean that? Because men of faith, I think courage does not necessarily mean the lack of fear. But when I think of men of faith have courage, it takes me back. I don't want to keep belaboring, but it is such a bellwether for us. God is everything or he is nothing. What makes me say that? That's faith. That is men, that's what that is. And so it's not that this situation is not, this is a scary situation. We can ready to lose our house. Somebody's in a scary situation. I lost my job. I don't know what the income is going to look like. Somebody's in a scary situation. my mate is leaving me and we've been together for X number of years. And I don't know what the market is like for an old person out here trying to start over. Somebody's in scary situations, you know, but then the only thing that antidotes that is not, and Steve said it doesn't mean it's going to be okay, but I'm going to be okay, you know, and that's the God is everything. That's the courage piece. And the courage piece for me is I needed to get up in the morning, or there are times, you guys, and people who've been sober a while, all have had want to just lay in the bed and not get out sometimes, want to get in the fetal position and just not face this. Don't want to go in here and face this embarrassing situation. Demoted at work, people laughing at me, people looking at me, going to the meeting, just broke up. Everybody knows I showed my ass and something. So what does that? What gives me legs? What gives me fuel? That's that God is everything. Okay. Don't feel good, but that's what the courage looks like, because I think I know courage is supposed to feel like something. It's supposed to feel no, that's what courage looks like.
Thank you, Doug. Steve, did you want to jump on that? Or?
I just think that, you know, a flip to that a little bit too is that one of the reasons that all men of faith have courage is because they had to demonstrate some courage to get to faith. And I remember being a little boy, 2-3 years old, and without not knowing how to swim. And my dad standing there in the swimming pool waist high with his arms out saying, jump. And I'm, you know, I mean, it took forever. And finally I jumped. I didn't jump out of faith. I jumped out of courage and self-centered fear. And then within 5 minutes, I'm running around, I'm leaping. I'm not, you know what I mean? I had this faith was developed by cause and effect. I'm a proofs in the pudding type of guy. And so my faith is emboldened in AA over time, because the more often I have trusted God, the more often it has served me well.
Thank you, guys. Nick, come on up, please.
Oh, hey, I'm Nick. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, everybody. Steve, you said, I tried to take a note of it. Fear is contractual obligations I've made in the covenant with God in step 3. And that hit me, and it sounded like you were talking about only letting God manage certain parts of my life. Like, I'm going to let him into my relationships, but I'm not going to let him into my finances. How does that lead to your fear experience? Thanks.
Well, first of all, Nick, write that down and send it to me, because I have never said that before, and it showed up tonight. So I want to put that in there, baby. But the truth is that that's what struck me, is that I realized that I have in that third step. I mean, I am saying, do with me as you will. But my fears become, whether conscious or not, are the list of things I am not willing for God to do with as he will. I'm actually giving him, these are the things you're allowed to do with this list of stuff. And I'm just trying to be free. I'm trying to get my list from pen to pencil, and ultimately smaller and maybe all the way off the page.
Thank you, Nick. Trisha, we'll try you again.
Hi, everybody. I'm Trisha, and I am an alcoholic. And I wasn't sure how we were supposed to ask the question, so I'm glad I got called on. I have always struggled with a really simple explanation when asked by sponsees what's another simple explanation or definition of self-reliance. What does self-reliance mean?
What is self? Go ahead, Steve.
No, she asked for simple, Ralph. You go.
Tricia, what does self-reliance mean? Give me a fear. Give me one of your fears.
Okay. Of not being enough.
A fear of not being, oh, that's a wonderful fear for self-reliance. Okay. And how does that fear play out? What happens? Why do you fear not being enough?
Oh gosh. I didn't know I was going to be doing a little inventory on here. Why do I fear that? I don't know. I don't know if this
because
just,
people will look down on me if I'm
and-
not. People will look down on me, right?
Oh,
I'll
yes.
be less. I'll be
Yeah.
less than
People-
somebody else, right?
Yes.
You
Fear of
won't
not
like
being
me.
right. Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Not being liked, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And what happens if you're not liked? It hurts.
Nothing.
If
Well, yes,
it hurts me, right? To not be like. Can you make me like you?
I can try, but no, I can't.
But what happens when but this fear of not being enough, what do you do now to try to make me like you? You don't even know me, but you need everybody to like you for you to be okay, right? So what?
Yeah.
You try to find out what I want, what you think I would like you to be, right?
Okay.
So you try to be somebody else, right?
Yeah.
And so you're somebody else in every situation, right?
Yes.
How does that work?
It doesn't.
Does it make me like you?
No.
Can you make me like you?
No.
But you think you can make me like you.
I'm hoping.
So me relying on me, I cannot bring about the desired result. Me relying on me cannot bring me. Self-reliance causes me to do, and there are things I do when I rely on myself to get the desired effect. I lie on job applications to try to get a job because I can't make them give Ralph White a job just being Ralph White. I show up in relationships as a representative because I can't make Trish like Ralph just as Ralph is. So me relying on me. So what would God have me to be? We think there is a different basis, the basis of relying on infinite God rather than finite self. What does that change? Still may not make Ralph like me, but I'm okay. Because why does Ralph have to like me anyway for me to be okay? Because I'm relying on me to make it through this world. And that's scary because the world is too big. But if I rely on God, whether Ralph and Steve like this question I ask or not, guess what? I'm going to be all right. And then here's the magic. People start liking authentic Trish. Really? The ones who like Trish. The ones who don't. And Trish is okay in the world, in the role that's assigned anyway. But when I'm assigning me, I spend all my time, me relying on me to bring about the desired result. That's self-reliance. I think I can bring about desired results, me, on my own. That's a long answer, and you said give you a short answer. But to me, the best way to see it is, how does that play out in my life?
I am so glad I asked this question. Thank you.
Thank you, Trish.
Thank you, Trish, for the question. I got a question. I think Teresa does, as no more hands up. Just to, so I guess, segue into it, if you guys will. Ralph talked about there's as many different ways to do an inventory as there are alcoholics, and that is true. And the big book is fairly clear on the resentment inventory, what they intend us to do, right? But when it comes to the 3 columns and then the 4th column, look for your mistakes, what the fear inventory seems to be, from what I've heard others say, where people sort of have trouble extracting the questions to ask, the mechanics of it. And Ralph sort of demonstrated that. I was wondering if you guys could share with us what are the mechanics of the fear inventory, because it's not very clear as it is in the resentment inventory for a lot of people. I know that. Thank you very much.
Go, Steve, since you were holding one up.
Well, the point I was going to make, Ali, is that of these multiple inventories I have, each one looks a little different. And again, I'm a proof in the pudding guy. Like I said, I'm looking for the result. The The 2019 version is now cleanly single space typed on my computer, right? It's a Word document. But on that one, I will tell you that and I know you can't see it on this virtual thing, but it was a little different in that I had a heading. I said, I've got fear around my job. That's one of my fears. And here were questions, and I said, fear that I'll be exposed for not having done a good enough job. Fear that I'm incapable of doing the job. Fear that I have not worked hard enough. Fear that Wes and John will see that I have not worked hard enough. Fear that I'll be embarrassed, and fear that our company failings are my fault. You know, that was a tough day, by the way, but, and I had fear around financial insecurity. And then I listed those. I said, fear that we don't have adequate funds for our future. Fear that it's my fault. Fear that Abby will always need our financial help. That's my daughter. Fear that Abby's losing her health insurance. Fear that I need to reach out for financial help. So so those were the fears. And then I did just what the book says. I got the next line that says, I asked myself why I have them. And it says clearly the reason I have them is because I'm afraid I won't be okay if any of those things happen. And I quit. I'm not saying other people overcomplicate it. I don't see the multiple columns on that for me, but that's how I get to my desired result. Somebody else might do different mechanics to get to their desired result.
Thank you, Steve. Ralph, you're good?
I thought Teresa had a question, so I was
all right. Okay.
going to get another question in.
No, actually, I'm good.
Oh, that was it? As Steve said, I have done so many different forays through fear inventory. In fact, we don't have a lot of time. The very first fear inventory I did was very different than any of the others. We had an assignment. It was 12 of us in a workshop, and we had an assignment. And that assignment was throughout the week, want you to go out, and if you encounter a fearful situation, share about a fearful situation you encounter when you don't bring God into the situation, and then share about another situation where you brought God into a situation. And so I have had all the way from writing columns about what's the fear, what's the underlying fear under that fear, I've done it a lot of different ways. I am of the school of thought of Steve. You know, I don't get caught up. And you and I talk a lot about it, Ali, and the mechanics as much anymore. There's I think I'm going to save this because I don't want to spend a lot of time. And I hope I remember this thought. But when we get to maybe 6 and 7, I hope I remember it. But you guys, there is a thin line, and don't get confused with learning and seeking. Sometimes we can confuse learning with seeking. There is a difference. Now, learning, it can be a seeking, and you can be seeking knowledge and information. But the seeking we're talking about, when we go to in chapter 5, we talk about God could and would if he was sought. Not knowledge, not information, not book. So don't get confused, because Steve and I sit here and we kind of bring some of this information to light, that the learning is the end game, The seeking is the end game. The seeking, not the learning.
And Ollie, let me say one last thing, because it was huge for me and I just remembered it. And I invite anyone to try this exercise. But when I was doing that first fear inventory in 1997, in real time, halfway down the page, it struck me that there was victimization in my fears, and that really most of my fears were self-pity. And so I would encourage someone, and I have guys do this, not to make fun, but I say, read your inventory to me in a whiny voice. And so take a look, do that inventory. It's heartfelt, it's meaningful, it deserves to be heard. But then just do the exercise of reading it to yourself in a whiny voice, and I promise it will reframe it for you.